Fantasy Football Weather Guys. My name is Michael Ventures, Doc V, meteorologist extraordinaire. I'm here joined with my colleague, meteorologist Sean Bratton. And we're here talking about weather in NFL around the week this weekend. We're here to quantify the weather risk here in sports. So, Sean, how you doing this morning, brother?
I'm doing well here, Mike. Still kind of recovering from Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, happy Thanksgiving. It was great. You know, this was our first Thanksgiving with the little one. So it was an event, obviously as your first holiday with your child, but it went well. It was great. It was really low key in the sense, we're trying to limit our circle there with the infant, but it was nice. How was your Thanksgiving?
Good. Yeah, no, it was really nice. Yeah, good relaxing. A few days off there. So good and now ready to go because we got some exciting stuff going on this week.
Yeah, we do. We have a nice lineup of games this weekend. It's week 13, so as you approach into the fantasy football season, these games, as you move on forward, if you're not killing the league or you're not getting crushed in the league, these weeks are extremely important to understand what type of risks there are to optimize your lineups, because every game matters here, and you don't want to have a guy go off on your bench with 20 points and have some kind of dud in your lineup here. So that's what we're going to focus on and talk about some of the risks here. And why don't I share my screen and talk about some of the weather games that we're paying attention to around the NFL this week. And there's two games that our algorithm is cautioning for risk here. And this is our weather impact table. If you want to look at these games here and track these games live, go to www.FFWeatherguys.com, and you can get this live feed of weather events or weather around the NFL. And we have these different games here, live API feed. And you can see that there's orange boxes and green boxes. And the green boxes represent the games that don't have any impacts from weather, or they're in the dome, so they don't really matter, right? The orange boxes, they show that there's some risk for weather. And Sean, what games are we most worried about this week?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the highlight of this week is by far the New England Buffalo game. That's going to be a super exciting Monday night game. But we also have one other game on the Sunday slate, and that is when the Arizona Cardinals come to town and actually come to my hometown here in Chicago, playing the Chicago Bears. Now, these are both associated with the same system. It's a really large synoptic system. Originally this week we had a few other games on the slate, but these are two main ones that we're focusing on for this week.
Yeah, so we have an event here in the Great Lakes in the Windy City, as we refer it in Chicago, and then this grinder of a matchup, the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. And this is a big-time NFL game because this is where the Patriots, I live in New England, right? I'm in Boston area. God, man, it's so sickening listening to all the sports radio here in Patriots town because everyone is hyping the Patriots up to make a Super Bowl run, the first of such without Tom Brady. So, everyone is jumping on the bandwagon here again. They're all, earlier in the season, the hopes were down. It was great as a New York Jets fan, and now it's sick.
Keyword there is you were a New York Jets fan.
Oh, no. I still am, but it's tough, obviously. I don't want to get into that too much here, but let's focus up on the forecast here and talk about some of these games. So we'll start off here and just quickly talk about our weather impact table and look at the first game highlight here. This is the Cardinals at Chicago Bears game, and you can see there's a caution flag here based off of weather. If you look at the actual forecast, now our forecast is powered by the National Weather Service. We are pulling from their API. National Weather Service is predicting temperatures to generally be in the 40s. Winds, though, are going to be pretty moderate, right? We're looking at 17-mile-per-hour winds sustained. And then with some precipitation, they're predicting about 0.08 of an inch of rain here, and you can see how the orange box is highlighted around our game, and we're worried about rain, some precipitation, and some wind at this game. This is potentially the return of Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. We'll get to that, but there's some. Yeah. I know that a lot of folks like me who have these guys in lineups are really interested in these games. And then we'll focus finally after we talk about this first game here, the New England Patriots and Buffalo Bills. And this looks like more of a significant impact game here. 32 temperatures in the lower 30s, so right around freezing. I don't know if you've played football in cold weather, but it's tough on your body when you're in that cold of weather. And the big thing here is winds. Winds are going to be sustained of 26-mile-per-hour winds with cold air, and there's a potential for lake effect snow here. So we'll talk about that as we move forward, and we'll let Sean break down what's going on synoptically. If I head over to our weather maps, and talk about the actual weekend, the progression of the pattern here. Sean, let's take it over to you.
Yeah, so we have this area of low pressure developing over the northern plains. This actually, as we move into Sunday here, is actually not an overly, at least initially, not an overly strong system, but it will intensify. And one of the things to look at here, as Mike is showing our mean sea level pressure map with precipitation, is we have that bulk of precipitation over the upper Great Lakes, and it starts to extend down up into down into the Chicago region. And the other thing to look at here is those black swirly lines. Those are called isobars, and the closer those are together, the more windy the surface conditions are going to be, and those winds flow mostly parallel to those isobars. So we could see that we're going to have some south-southwesterly winds for the Chicago area. As Mike mentioned, we're expecting winds in the 15-20 mile an hour range. I'm looking at the National Weather Service, and they're also predicting periods of gusts, maybe even over 30 miles an hour for that Chicago game. And the other thing there is precipitation. So the precipitation, which we kind of get a general idea of on this map, but it's going to be a little bit more isolated. There are these pockets of precipitation, and some of those pockets are going to be a little bit heavier. But what I envision for this game is we may have kind of an off and on rain event where it may rain for a quarter, and then maybe a quarter we're okay, and then maybe toward the end of the game we may get a little bit of rain. But when we do get these pockets, there is potential to get some heavy rain for at least a short period of time. And so the conditions could get messy here in the second half. We don't expect this to be like we saw the Colts and 49ers game where this is torrential downpours for the entire game, but the National Weather Service is saying that we can expect some precipitation for this 3-hour window for this game.
Okay, and as this storm rolls further east as we move into Monday night now, and we head off to our Monday night event, you can see how the storm really gets its act together. I mean, it just rapidly, it looks like it's bombing out almost out over eastern Canada, and a nice, really nice cold front here. Maybe some isolated severe thunderstorms down in the south, but we care about as this thing moves out across the northeast, because then we have obviously our Monday night game, and that's the Buffalo Bills Patriots.
Yeah, exactly. And so just like Mike mentioned, notice those lines, those black lines around the storm, those are getting incredibly tight. And that's going to be one of the main concerns here for the Buffalo game. And just the orientation of how the wind is going to be blowing, it's going to be blowing off of Lake Erie. So Mike has his surface wind map up, and if you look over Buffalo, Mike, I don't know if you could count, just kind of give our viewers an idea of where that Buffalo region is. We can see, yeah, exactly. So our winds are going to be picking up in the area off Erie. So that means a few things. One is, obviously, we're going to be experiencing some pretty significantly windy conditions. We are very confident that this game will probably have winds at least in the 20-25, maybe up to 30 plus, gusts maybe 35 plus for this game. And the other thing that means is typically during winter time, or as we progress into winter, if we have winds off the lakes, what that does is it creates a lot of lake effect snow. So Buffalo is known, the Buffalo-Rochester area, those areas are known for getting a lot of lake effect snow. And that could be something that we're at least forecasting for a period of the game, maybe seeing some snowflakes, and it's not going to take much, even just a little bit of a coating to get the ball wet there. And that can even have a more drastic impact with low temperatures that front passes through, and the winds that'll be pretty incredibly elevated as well.
Yeah, I mean, some of the winter pictures out of Buffalo when you get lake effect snow, it's incredible. And these lake effect snow events are very, we call these mesoscale events in the weather community, because they're very small strips of intense snowfall. And it's really difficult for our weather models to really resolve exactly where it's going to go. They give a good general idea, but sometimes they can be shifted 10, 20 miles north or south of the predicted area, and that could really cause some significant changes in your localized forecast. So that's something that we're going to have to pay attention to as Monday comes along to understand where exactly that band's going to set up.
Yep.
But at least as Sean mentioned, this is a synoptic pattern that is conducive for some lake effect snow in the Buffalo region for Monday Night Football. So that's something that we're to pay attention to. But the main concern, as we were, we're also looking at, is the strong winds. So let's go out back to this Arizona Cardinals at Chicago matchup. Let's talk a little bit more granular now and understand exactly some of the weather risks. And I have the College of DuPage, her 10-meter gust forecast. So the HER model is this high-resolution weather model that allows us to kind of understand more smaller scale features to kind of resolve that due to the resolution of the model itself and the temporal resolution. And Sean was mentioning some gusty conditions here for Sunday in the Windy City. And we can see here right around game time, this is Sunday afternoon, and we can actually see some really intense southerly, southeasterly gusts, right? We're looking at gusts in the upper 20s and lower 30s around game time. And I want to focus on the actual wind vector, the location of where the wind's coming. So, Sean, you are a Chicago person. You've been there for many years. Can you tell me a little bit about, the Chicago Bears Stadium and how this is oriented here?
Yeah, it's right on Lake Michigan. It's actually Soldier Field is just a little bit south of the main loop area. But as Mike, as you can see, has this picture up here, is that this stadium is oriented north to south, and it's right on the lake. So we're expecting these winds out of the south, right? So this is probably going to be a little bit more of a parallel wind event as opposed to a kind of a perpendicular crosswind event, which can either be a little bit easier for you to maybe make some kicks or maybe some passes, or much more difficult. But the winds will be whipping because we are so close to the shore as well.
Yeah, so this is a parallel wind event. This is also the potential return of Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. We've been waiting for weeks now, multiple weeks, for these guys to return, especially if you spent some capital on Hopkins early on in the draft. And Murray was a pretty high drafted quarterback as well. Both are game time decisions here in this game, so we're going to have to pay attention right down to the wire. It seemed like there was a lot more optimism earlier in the week for them to make their return, bearing a setback. I haven't heard of any reports of both of these guys, having any setbacks, so I'm expecting them to play. Yeah. But as we, the Arizona Cardinals organization is going to be very cautious with these guys. So, I think that there is a small chance that they sit out, but I also lean in favor that they return. Sean, do you have any comments on the return of these two?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in alignment with you. I think Kyler Murray right now, the reports are that he is going to start this one. Right now, he's officially listed as questionable, but I anticipate him starting. I think Hopkins is going to be a little bit more of a game time decision. I think both are really going to make a push to be out in the field because they have struggled a little bit more offensively of late. But it's worth noting here that the over-under for this game is incredibly low. It's around 42 and a half, with the implied point total for the Chicago Bears only around 18 points. So regardless, this is not expected to be a barn burner. And with the added weather component, I expect the flow of this game maybe to be slowed down a little bit and there not to be a ton of points being scored. Mike, you have Kyler Murray in our league, right? Are you planning on starting him coming off this injury, playing in some messy weather? Or are you going to hold and wait?
So in redraft leagues, I am playing him because that's basically, you're just looking at the quarterback list who's available on the free agent list. It's really tough to say, oh, I want to start one of these guys over Kyler Murray. So I am playing him in redraft, and that's because I'm forced to. Yeah. In DFS, I'm not going out and trying to start Kyler Murray. Chicago's been giving up the 10th fewest points to opposing quarterbacks this season. And looking at Kyler Murray in historical standards, in weather games, he hasn't really played a whole lot in weather events. I was taking a look at some of his statistics. I mean, he's got one game played in wet conditions in precip, and he has 4 games in windy conditions, which windy is I'm not sure exactly how Yahoo is classifying what their wind threshold is. It might be something under what the game is predicted to be. So I'm a little concerned there. There just isn't a huge sample size. But as I mentioned, like if you're forced to play him in redraft, I'm doing it just because Kyler Murray is a phenomenal athlete. He's got upside in rushing, and he seems to be doing well with his passing attack. DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, and Rondale Moore. If Hopkins plays, then he's going to have all of his wide receivers available. However, it's not the best matchup, right? Chicago
Yeah,
is a stout
they are, and they've
defense.
been even a little bit better than that of late. They've been kind of sneaky good of late, the Chicago defense. And I think I'm with you here. I am not super confident in Kyler Murray coming off this injury. He has only played in one precipitation game, and that is a very limited sample size. But what our stats are telling us is that when he is playing in rain, his point totals, fantasy point totals, and just point totals in general regarding passing yards, touchdowns are definitely down. So I'm definitely more hesitant in starting Kyler in these messy conditions potentially throughout the game. And Hopkins, he has just been unfortunately not a reliable wide receiver one this year. So I'm kind of holding on the passing attack on the Cardinals. Now on the other end, James Conner, he's been a beast. I mean, actually, the Chicago defense against the rush has been better of late as well. They're more middle of the tier, but a little better of late. But I expect James Conner to get north of 20 carries in this one. And he has actually had a touchdown in every single game up from week 7. So week 7 until current, he has gotten a touchdown in every game. In most of these games, he's getting 15 to 20 carries. I expect him to kind of carry a little bit more of the load as Kyler gets more acclimated, and especially if these conditions are going to be rainy. We do see about a 10 to 15% uptick in fantasy points for running backs, or at least opportunities for running backs in these games.
Yeah, James Conner's been a tremendous value if you draft him in a redraft. And a lot of that has to do with Chase Edmonds also getting hurt. He's still on the IR, so we're not expecting Edmonds in this game. And James Conner, he is a touchdown machine, as Sean mentioned. He has the second most touchdowns of any running back, rushing touchdowns this season. He's second to who's the monster Jonathan Taylor himself. But I think that James Conner, if you are interested in playing DFS, he is a safe start in this one because he will get the value. He gets the slight boost based off of weather conditions. And I think he's just been producing steadily each week. And especially as Kyler Murray comes back, you expect the offense to produce a little bit better. You'd expect that just based off of an upgrade at the quarterback position.
And go ahead, Mike.
Oh, yeah, finish up your James Conner talk because I want to move off to the tight end position here.
Okay, yeah, well, before we do that, I mean, first off, what Mike said, I am playing James Conner in my DFS. I'm putting into that lineup. I think this is going to be a slower moving game. I don't think there's going to be a ton of big plays in this one. So I think James Conner is going to get a lot of volume. But quickly, before we move on to tight end, what are you doing with David Montgomery? Right, he has definitely struggled of late. He's usually hitting around the 15 carry mark, but he's had, I think, 63 yards or less in his past 3 games and no touchdowns on the ground here. So what are you doing with David Montgomery against this Arizona front, which is not as good as their passing front here, but they're still a solid defense? What are you doing with David Montgomery?
So if you have depth at the running back position, I would recommend probably not trying to find a different option. In my ESPN league, I have a number of good running backs. I actually put Montgomery on the bench this week. Doesn't mean that he will not get volume in this game, but I just don't trust the overall offense right now of the Chicago Bears outside of Darnell Mooney. I mean, Mooney's been a highlight so far as of late, and he's been getting a ton of volume. Montgomery coming off the injury, it just doesn't seem like to me he's got the upside right now, the upside factor. And I think the Cardinals are going to come out on top of this game. I think they're going to take the lead, and I think that's going to dictate the script to have maybe a higher volume for Mooney rather than Montgomery. Yeah. That's just my gut.
Yeah, I mean, they only put up 16 on the Lions during our Thanksgiving game last Thursday. I mean, they're anemic a little bit on offense right now. They're still trying to find their stride. They don't have Justin Fields. I believe Andy Dalton's going to be taking the helm this week. Yeah. So I kind of agree with this. I kind of have a feeling that David Montgomery might have a little bit more of a breakout game because I think he's going to get some more volume in this one. But I'm just not confident against this Arizona front. But do we want to move on to the passing for the Bears and the Cardinals now?
Well, yeah. We're tight end Zach Ertz. He's this mid-season acquisition. I think Ertz has been shown to be more of a contributing factor on the Arizona Cardinals offense. That being said, Chicago has been giving up the 8th fewest points to tight ends this year. Though that we've seen in these big weather games, typically some of the deeper passes are muted. So I'm interested to see if Zach Ertz gets actually a little bit more volume especially as he acclimates more to the offense in this game.
Yeah.
And I think he's worth a potential start in redraft and even flyer on DFS.
Yeah, and they had a bye last week, but the last game against Seattle, he had 9 targets, 8 catches, 88 yards, and 2 TDs. I think they know that he could be a really viable option here, especially in the red zone, right? And he could get separation. He's a physical tight end. I know he's kind of dropped off over the last few years, but I think he has some potential here. I don't think he's a bad play on DFS either. He's a little bit less than some of these other top tier tight ends, but he still gives you that potential, that touchdown upside. So I'm okay with Zach Ertz. What about Cole Kmet, who's been emerging lately as well?
Yeah, so I was burned by Khamet a couple of weeks ago in my DFS lineup. I thought he would have a much better productive game, but last time playing against Detroit, he had 11 targets, 8 receptions, with 65 yards. He was a big, significant part of the passing attack, and I believe that was with Andy Dalton. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. So Andy Dalton's back here. He feels comfortable with passing to the tight end position. Obviously, it seems more comfortable than what Justin Fields has been. I think that Cole Kmet's going to have a safe PPR floor here. Decent. I think he's a decent play again in this game here because of the limited wide receiver corps of the Chicago Bears. I think Mooney's going to have opportunity as well, and I think number 2 option here is Cole Kmet. So I do feel good about starting Kmet in this game.
Yeah, I mean, in his last, let's say his last 5 games, he's had 6 targets, 8 targets. He did have a down game against Baltimore with only 2 targets. And then last week, as you mentioned during the Detroit game, he had 11 targets. So the Notre Dame product here, I think, will have a safe floor, especially in rainy conditions. We typically see usually passing options, usually see about a 10% dip in similar games. But tight ends, sometimes they act as a safety net, and especially for Andy Dalton, who sometimes likes to just drop off the ball, short yardage. Cole Kmet may be a benefactor of this situation.
Yeah. And finally, with regards to defenses, both defenses get a slight boost here based off of the weather conditions, just because of we see typically more mistakes made, more fumbles, etc., or erroneous throws based off of wind. So I think that if you're looking at DFS, I think you could potentially play either the Cardinals or the Bears in this matchup. Bears are actually in DFS. Bears are actually at 2,600. The Cardinals are a bit higher at 3,400. That's because Chicago's been a worse offense. So Cardinals seem to be a pretty good DFS play this week to me, especially with some of the weather conditions here.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Darnell Mooney. I don't know if some people may be wondering, hey, do I play this guy in rainy conditions? I mean, he has just been an all-star of late, getting basically a touchdown in the last 2 weeks. Last 3 weeks he's had 2 of the 3 weeks he's had touchdowns, and getting above 15 fantasy points in our league the last 3 weeks. So if you have him, start him. I mean, you got to start him. Andy Dalton's going to look his way, but really temper expectations. He's maybe not going to get you that 50-yard bomb that he's been able to pull out of the hat the last several weeks. So, I mean, you play him, but maybe limit expectations a little bit. And then Andy Dalton, he doesn't seem to have a huge or be impacted by rain and other precipitation or wind as much as other quarterbacks. But I think he's going to be a game manager in this one, so don't expect big things from him either.
And I just want to say we are streaming live, so I just want to say hello to Yanni. Thanks for joining the stream, buddy. And Lex, thanks for your coming in today, asking the question here. Based off of this particular game, Lex is debating between playing Zach Ertz in his flex or Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is going up against the Indianapolis Colts I think it's a home game at Houston. So, Sean, in this particular matchup, do you feel confident in playing Ertz over Brandon Cooks, or would you take the wide receiver 1 of Houston with Tyrod Taylor at the helm?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about Ertz in this one. I think he's going to get the volume. I think he's a trusted receiver. I know that's a little bit riskier, but I think the touchdown upside is there with Ertz. We've seen that he is looked at in the red zone. Cooks is still a solid receiver. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts, I'll be honest, I don't love playing my players against the Indianapolis Colts. Nowadays, right now, the Colts are 10-point favorites on a 44.5 over-under. So they're not expecting the Texans to get a whole lot of points in this one. So I'd be going with the touchdown upside of Ertz if it were me.
Yeah, and Cook seems to have an illness this past week. So it is something to pay attention to, though he did return to practice on Friday. And, it does seem like he should be ready to go. I know last week he had a touchdown, but he only had 5 targets. So, and that was against the New York Jets. So as Sean mentions here, I would probably lean in favor of Ertz in this one as well, just because the defense is going to be a little bit harder than the Jets were last year and last week, and Cooks didn't really produce all that well. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next game here, and let me share the screen back up, and let's talk about our main event when it comes to weather. This is the Monday Night Football event, the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills, and we talked about this game in the forecast synopsis a little bit earlier, but let's break it down again. We're looking at a cold game here. Temperatures in the lower 30s, so right around freezing, with winds gusting out of the west. Sustained winds of 25 miles per hour or greater, with the threat of lake effect snow. And Sean, I was taking a look at this game and trying to look back into our historical archive of weather events, and you know what? I could not find a game where we had temperatures generally in the lower 30s with winds 25 miles per hour or higher. So this is a rare event when it comes to football in the archive, because you could get these strong winds, but usually temperatures are warmer. We usually have milder conditions. This is going to be a cold temperature game with strong winds, and that's going to produce your feels like temperatures are probably going to be extremely cold now because of that. You get that cold air whipping on your skin. It's going to be something that's not favorable. So Vegas opened this game at 46 points. They've dropped this game down to 42 points now, according to Caesars Sportsbook. Some of the different places you can actually make bets on over-unders are actually even a little bit lower than that 42 point. They're at 41.5. So this is another low-scoring event.
Yeah, I think absolutely it's a low-scoring event. I was actually did a little bit of analysis, total score analysis, and in similar weather conditions, which to Mike said, we don't have a lot of data points for this because we got both colder temperatures in the low 30s, maybe even upper 20s. Temperatures are going to be dropping throughout this game as the front passes through. Looking at potentially some lake effect snow. And we have winds 25, 30 miles an hour. These games are not very common. But when I did that analysis, the total score on average for these kind of games, and this is probably even a little bit worse conditions, is in the mid to upper 30s. Now, you have some good offenses going here, but you also have some pretty stout defenses. So I anticipate that this is going to be a little bit of a struggle. I kind of anticipate this game to look a little bit like the Bills-Chiefs game last year. You had these high offenses coming in. Weather just seemed to not benefit the offensive players. And I think with Mac Jones, rookie, coming in, going against a really stout, really good Buffalo defense. And then we know that Bill Belichick shuts down your top player. And who is that? That's Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. I think they really limit Stephon Diggs' opportunities, making Allen maybe get a little bit more of a higher rushing floor. Maybe he rushes a little bit here, but it's going to be hard to move the ball in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how well the Patriots can shut down the number one option when it comes to the passing game on the opposing squad. And we see it week after week. So I'm going to take a quick look at the Buffalo Bills Stadium here from aerial view. So, this is oriented from north is at the top of the screen, west is the left, etc. So we're looking at actually a comparison of true north. And you can see how the Bills Stadium is oriented from the northwest to southeast. The winds in this game, if I go back to our wind map and show you on Monday night, you can see how the winds are coming directly out of the west here. So that is more, we do have some bit of a crosswind component here that could potentially impact some of the passing games here, regardless of how well these defenses have been performing. Just looking at breaking down and starting off with the Buffalo Bills here. And starting off with the star of, Josh Allen. Josh Allen I think he's been ranked the quarterback number 1 of fantasy points throughout this season so far. And I think it's not a consistent, he hasn't been consistently good across each week. It's more about how he has these really big up weeks. And then, if he has a tough defense or if he doesn't play well, he doesn't do as well as expected. So I think this is a game where he may struggle as well. Patriots defense has been giving up the second fewest points to opposing quarterbacks. When looking at some of Josh Allen's statistics, he does have a reduction in his passing game compared to historical normals. But that being said, we do see Josh Allen actually rush more in some of these weather event games. When obviously the coaches know there's some strong winds in the game, we do see Allen actually have more of a floor because of his rushing upside. So while I am nervous about Allen's upside, I do think his floor is actually still going to be pretty safe here.
Yeah, I think I do too. I mean, I think he's going to have a good floor. But I mean, if you're doing DFS for this game, are you paying up? Let's say you're doing a captain's mode or something like that. Are you paying up for Allen in this one? I know when I'm creating my DFS lineup for Monday, we can't do that yet. But this weekend, when I do make it for Monday Night Football, I don't think I'm putting Josh Allen and spending up for him in this one.
As a captain, it's a tough one. I might actually. I think Josh Allen is probably going to be the chalk play for the captain mode on DFS Monday night because he has the, he does have that rushing upside. He's still going to be getting the ball most of the time. He's going to be facilitating the offense through him. You could take a risk and try to go with the running backs for Patriots though.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that. The running backs for the Patriots, right? We have Damien Harris. We have Stevenson as well. I mean, who are you going with in this one? Who are you putting your money on? I mean, this seems like, again, the typical Bill Belichick kind of a rotating door of running backs in where you not necessarily know who's going to get a bulk of the load for the given game.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It seems like they were pretty evenly split last week, though Damien Harris got the goal line rush and got the touchdown in there. You hear the Bills defense and you get a little nervous. I just want to point out that Tre'Davious White is out of this game, so there is a little bit more opportunity for the Patriots offense to do a little bit better here. You think that the Bills rush defense, it looks good on paper. There's only 5 teams that are allowing fewer rushing yards per game than Buffalo, and 6 teams have seen fewer rushing attempts against them since 2021 or in 2021. And no team has been giving up any lower expected points added per rush than Buffalo through week 12. However, when Buffalo goes against some really good run offenses, they seem to struggle. And we saw that with Derrick Henry with his 143-yard and 3 scores against him in week 11. I'm sorry, was that week? No. That was week 6, excuse me. And then Jonathan Taylor played in week 11. And he exploded for 185 rushing and 5 total touchdowns.
Yeah.
That was his 5 total touchdown game. So we've seen good rush offenses do well against Buffalo, and that makes me feel better at playing Damien Harris or Ramondre Stevenson. I think Damien Harris will be the goal line back, and I'd like to play him for his potential in getting those rushing touchdowns. But Stevenson seems to me like the more explosive back, and he may have that opportunity to go off and get those higher yard totals.
Yeah.
So I think both are decent plays.
I agree. And to your point, right, Buffalo only gave up 44 yards to the Saints last week, but in the last 3 on average for Buffalo has been 126 yards. And this rushing attack we see can move the ball. And so I'm okay. I have Stevenson. I'm debating starting him in this matchup. And you got to think about you have Mac Jones in this one, right? Rookie QB playing in really adverse weather conditions. We do have a little bit of stats. I mean, he has played in some weather games just being a rookie. And we do see, especially in windy games, that his stats do look to fall off a little bit. I mean, it looks like it's a statistically significant drop-off for Jones. So if we have cold, we have wind, and a tough Buffalo front, maybe they rely a little bit more heavily on their rushing attack. I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Belichick just slow plays this, trusts their defense, and just tries to run down the clock and really just hands off the ball. And we could see maybe a running back with 15, 20 carries in this one. Yeah,
so Damien Harris, I was looking at his career attempts per game, which is right around 13.8. In games where there's windy conditions, we actually see a significant increase in rushes attempts per game up to 18.6 or right around 19. So he gets an extra 5 carries per game in windy conditions. And I guarantee it's because of that scheme of the coach trying to mitigate the pressure off of his quarterback and putting more of a load on his running backs. So I think that both these guys have upside in this game, especially because we're going to see an increase in volume.
So what about the Buffalo running backs then? That's a little bit, you got Zach Moss, you got Singletary, you got Breida. Like, who are you going with here?
Yeah, so Zach Moss was a healthy scratch last week. He was inactive, so I think he's been demoted for whatever reason. He's been demoted, and we're seeing Matt Breida now step into that role. Devin Singletary had the bulk of the work last week, had 14 rushes, I believe, but Matt Breida has been looking like the better running back, getting those bigger plays and getting the touchdowns. So to me, I'm not playing either in this, but in the sense, if you're going to take a DFS start throw, I'd probably go with Matt Breida. He's probably going to be lower priced than Devin Singletary because he doesn't get as much volume. But the Patriots give up the 15 most fantasy points to running backs. They're really good on defense when it comes to against the quarterbacks play. I think Bills have been giving. The Patriots have been giving up the second fewest points to quarterbacks and fourth to wide receivers, but they're mid-level pack in rushing. So I think the attack here is to get them on the ground.
Yeah, and we see about a 15 to 20% increase in opportunity and point production for running backs in similar weather games. Again, this is even a little bit more of an extreme event, so I would not be surprised to see maybe Breida and Singletary get an increase in the workload. Because the other thing, when we're talking about the receiving, we've got Stephon Diggs, we got Emmanuel Sanders, we got Jacoby Myers, we got Kendrick Bourne as our wide receivers in this one. Are you excited about any of the wide receiver options going into this one?
I'm definitely staying away from Stephon Diggs just because you do see his lowest yards per reception in windy games throughout his career, and the Patriots are just a really good offense. If you're looking at other players like Emmanuel Sanders or Cole Beasley, those maybe the shorter passes, maybe Cole Beasley gets a little bit of opportunity there, and especially the number 3 option. So I think he has a little bit of opportunity to get a floor. But I'm not super bullish on anyone in the wide receiver core, especially as you get into the number 1 option there. But with Tre'Davious White out in this game, there does open the possibility for the wide receiver Patriots to do decent, right? I mean, Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Bourne specifically. If I had this option in our spreadsheet, start one, sit one, and cut one. Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers, Nelson Agholor. How would you do that, Sean?
I would be keeping
starting, sitting, and cut.
Starting, sitting, and cut. I would be starting Jacoby Myers. I would be cutting Nelson Agholor, and I'd be sitting Kendrick Bourne. What do you think?
Yeah, go ahead. I agree with the Nelson Agholor cut. I would actually start Kendrick Bourne over Jacoby Myers just because of how well he's been playing over the last few
He is, but he's had the thing with Kendrick Bourne, right, is when he is out in the field, they look his way and he's getting the touchdown opportunities. My fear there is he's having less opportunity. He's not on the field as much. So in this game, I want somebody out in the field a little bit more often. That's Jacoby Myers. We know he gets those targets. Obviously, he doesn't have the touchdown upside. I think he's 1 touchdown this year. He just can't get in the end zone. But I do trust that volume a little bit more as opposed to Kendrick Bourne. Again, when he is out there, they're looking his way, and he's had games where I think his last game, did he have multiple touchdowns in his last game?
He did. He had 20 points.
Yeah, he killed it, right? I want to hold him for not. I just don't want to play him in this game. I want to keep him. I think he has potential. I just don't want to play him in this game against a tough Buffalo defense in bad weather conditions where I don't know if they're going to be able to hit on that big play to Kendrick Bourne for that touchdown upside.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's fair. And then switching over to the tight ends here. We have Dawson Knox on Buffalo. Hasn't seen any real games like any similar weather conditions in his career since he's taken on his larger role this past year. And looking at Hunter Henry, Henry's been playing decent. He's been getting touchdown. He gets some of the targets in the red zone. Bills have been giving up the 6th fewest points to opposing tight ends. That being said, but this is the first year with the Patriots, so his historical splits in weather games are probably not representative to where they were when he was back with the Chargers. So I'm a little hesitant on Hunter Henry, but I do think that Dawson Knox has an opportunity here to get a little bit of an upside, and I think he's going to have those red zone looks again this week. So both tight ends, you could probably play him, and I'd probably target Dawson Knox over Hunter Henry in this one, but that's just a gut call.
Yeah, I think they're both going to get some volume in this one. I think we're going to see Mac Jones drop it off quite a few times, and I would expect Hunter Henry to be beneficiary of that. And same thing with Dawson Knox here. I mean, he could get 10 targets in a game or one or two targets in a game. You just don't know with Dawson Knox, but he did get two touchdowns in his last game. You know, he is looked at the red zone. So, Mike, your point of that touchdown upside is there, and really Hunter Henry has that same upside as well. I'm willing to play them. You know, we still statistically look at a drop off in these kind of weather conditions for tight ends, but these guys, the quarterbacks, definitely look to and definitely have the touchdown upside.
Yep. Okay, and let's finish off here with the kicking game. We think about these really windy events, right? At being, you know, as the ball goes up high in the sky, it's going to have an opportunity to be interacted more with winds, right? Especially strong winds. Nick Folk, kicker for the Patriots, is actually the highest scoring kicker of the season with 140 points this year. The next closest kicker is 108 points, and that's a tie between Carlson and Tucker. So Nick Folk has been extremely valuable this year, and you have to worry a little bit about the wind in this one because it is a little bit of a cross-component wind with Nick Folk, and you'd expect that, you know, with some of these passing attacks stalling because of these winds and maybe the rush game slowing down, you might have more opportunities for field goals in this game. You typically see these low-scoring games have more field goal attempts. So, Sean, do you have any concern about either Nick Folk on the Patriots or the Buffalo Bills kicker Tyler Bass?
It's just, I mean, Tyler Bass has that history. We've seen him in some weather games. What comes to mind for me is that really windy playoff game against the Ravens, and he missed two or three, maybe even three field goals. What I anticipate in this one is, you know, again, I envision that there will be some stalled drives in the red zone where they'll kick field goals, and if these are short enough, you know, I don't think there's going to be an issue, but if we're longer out, one or two things are going to happen, right? Either if they attempt these field goals from 40, 50 yards, either they're going to miss them or the coaches are going to decide maybe to go for it or even maybe do a pooch punt during in that yardage. And the kickers are not going to have the same opportunity. So I'm a little bit if you have a better option, I'd be going in that direction. I just don't think they're going to be as confident going for these longer field goals. We do see about a 15 to 20% drop off in make percentage for field goal kickers when you're approaching that 45, 50 yard mark. And I just think that the coaches may either go for it or just pin the other team deep because they're going to trust their defense.
Yeah, so the one thing I want to mention here for Nick Folk in his career, it does seem like, at least looking at historical standards, winning games has not really affected him all that much. His career average field goal percentage is 82.3. Winning games, it's 82.7. So there's really, even while it's a slight increase in percentage in winning games, it's not statistically significant. So to me, I suspect that the Patriots will still try to attack some of those longer kicks. With Nick Folk, I don't know if he's going to connect, but he hasn't done horribly. For Tyler Bass, yeah, I think what Sean mentioned is probably true there in that regards, and they'll probably try to go for it more, especially with the upside of the offense in Buffalo Bills going against the tough New England Patriots. And Sean, who do you think wins this game here? Man. I mean, this is going to be a grinder of a game. This is a big implication for playoffs. What do you think happens here?
I mean, this game is so razor close right now. It's, as you mentioned, like a 42 and a half over under. The Bills are favored by 2.5. This is almost a scratch play here. I think I'm going to be taking the Patriots in this one. I think Bill Belichick is going to come in. He has a game plan. He's used to this weather. I know this is a road game for him. I think they're going to play tough. I'm really liking what Mac Jones has been doing lately. I think he's going to manage this game. He's going to make less mistakes than Josh Allen, and I think this is going to be close. But I have the Patriots over the Bills, reluctantly, because I want the Bills to win.
Yeah, and me as a biased Jets fan, I'm going to say the Buffalo Bills win this game because I will not be able to live in New England if the Patriots win. It's just going to be sickening and deafening to hear all the Patriots community going off and how they're going to win the Super Bowl and how the Buffalo Bills are fake. And I do think, Sean, your analysis is probably right. The statistics suggest to me that Patriots should win this game, but I'm going to say that out of a complete bias stance, the Buffalo Bills win. because I really, this is a home game, so I'm hoping that the Bills will have the advantage there. But yeah, so let's do a quick summary here, Sean. We've been on for a while. Let's talk about quickly the games that we've been paying attention to this week. And I'll share my screen and show the weather impact table here. We're focusing on 2 weather games this week: Arizona Cardinals at the Chicago Bears. If you click on that game here, the main concern is more for the sense of wind and some light precipitation or scattered precipitation. Winds are going to be generally 15 to 17 miles per hour out of the south, which is more of a parallel wind event to the stadium. We have some concerns here, Sean, as Sean mentioned here, for some of the players, especially on the Chicago Bears side. But the main event is obviously the New England at Buffalo Monday night game here. And Sean, do you want to do a quick statement there to close out the discussion?
Yeah, for the New England Buffalo game?
Yeah.
I mean, this one we're expecting. This is definitely our game of the week from a weather perspective. Winds 25 plus, lake effect snow, cold temperatures. This is a very low over/under game, so just really limit expectations for your fantasy players in this one. They may not have as much scoring opportunities or really big play opportunities in this game, but this is going to be a super exciting matchup between division rivals and the Patriots and Bills. So I'm super excited for it.
Hell yeah. Guys, you can follow us on social media at FFWeatherguys. We're going to upload this stream to our YouTube channel at FFWeatherguys on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe there. And good luck in NFL Week 13. Sean, what would else would you like to say to close this out here?
No, just also, we'll be writing a blog. We'll be posting that today, and we'll make sure we send that out just in case you kind of want to review some of our player analysis. We'll go into detail in that blog post and send that out soon.
Yeah, and if you have any other questions about the weather, make sure to go to our website at ffweatherguys.com and check out the weather impact table that has live weather information that's continuously fed through it through APIs and lineup. There's also live lineups in there, so if you have any concerns about any of your players starting, you can always quickly check out over there to see what happens with the updates. Thanks so much, guys, and good luck in NFL Week 13. Let's go, guys.